Recording. So my name is Ratemo Morath. I work for PELUM Kenya, and today we are here to learn about Azolla Cultivation for animal feeds. And this is through the project for KCOA, Knowledge Hub for Organic Agriculture for Eastern Africa. And one of our guest speakers is a master trainer. Her name is Grace Misoi. She's going to introduce more about herself and where she works. So thank you so much for joining. We are all here to learn. So please give her a chance to just go through the presentation and tell us about Azolla and how we can start it. And then after, we're going to have a Q&A session. If you have questions, she's here to answer. So Grace, karibu sana. So I now hand over the mantle to you to take us through the 2-hour session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ratemo, and good morning, everyone. As you've heard from Ratemo, my name is Grace Misoi. I am a farmer, first of all. I do organic farming. And I don't do it because it is done. I do it because it's a passion and it's a way of life. I am also a master trainer under the KCOA Project. And I'm also the director of Advocacy for Change Foundation. Let me mention Advocacy for Change in a bit. So ACF is a non-governmental organization that works towards restoring wholeness. And we work to ensure that there is an environment that people work in harmony with nature and also with God. We are based in Eldoret, western part of Kenya, and we work in 7 counties, basically in the western part of Kenya. So we cut across the arid and semi-arid areas to the highlands. I'm so humbled to be a speaker in this session today, and we shall be talking about Azolla. In a nutshell, livestock production has been the main source of income of most households in Kenya, and the main challenge has been feeds, and especially the concentrates. As you've realized, what we get from our livestock compared to what we put in at times do not even break even. So we've opted to finding ways that we can cut down on cost of production. And one way is by producing or cultivating Azolla, which will help us in a number of in supplying a number of nutrients, as we shall see as we proceed in the training. We are also not just looking at the big livestock. We are also looking at the small animals like chicken and how Azolla can be of benefit. It is also worth noting that technology has come to help us make our lives better and improve on our pockets as well. Therefore, I welcome all of us, those who are following us live on Facebook and those who are part of this Zoom meeting as we go through this process. But remember, we are learning, all of us. So I'm looking forward to a very engaging session whereby I'll hear from you as you hear from me. This is the exchange of knowledge. So at the end of the day, I'm expecting that I should have learned from you and you will have learned from me. Karibuni sana. So in this session, we shall be covering the following contents. So by the end of the training, we'll have talked about the introduction to Azolla. We will have looked at the structure of Azolla. We will look at the economic value of Azolla. This is in relation to the nutrients that we get from Azolla. We will also look at the requirements for us to cultivate Azolla. We will also look at the cultivation and the steps of Azolla culture. Finally, we will look at the limitations of Azolla culture, because really, every coin has 2 sides, and we are not shy from talking about the other side. So we look at the limitations of Azolla. and then we'll have a session on question and answer. Let us walk together this journey. So let me introduce Azolla. Azolla has several names. Some would call it duckweed, others mosquito fan, others water fan. But all the same, it is an aquatic plant that grows rapidly, double their volumes in just 2 days, and it belongs to Sylvanaceae family. As you've seen, it grows rapidly, doubling its volume in only 2 days. That should tell you this is a very fast-growing aquatic plant. It is also worth noting that it grows in fresh water and is actually naturally available, mostly on moist soils, ditches, marshy ponds, and is widely distributed in the tropical belts of India. That is why it was first adopted in India before the rest of us thought of doing the same. So actually, for those of you who come from areas where we have marshy ponds, you should have seen this growing naturally or wild in the natural ecosystem. So actually, it's not something new. It's only that we are domesticating it for our own benefit. We are not supposed to get into a lot of science, but I'm also aware that we are being followed by students and those who are still continuing their studies or want to pursue their studies further. So allow me to talk about the taxonomy of Azolla. So its kingdom is Plantae, division is Pteridophyta. Their class is Polypodiopsida. The order is Palvinales, family Salvinaceae, and genus is Azolla. And at that point, we have several types of Azollas, as we shall see as we progress. Now, allow me to talk about the economic value of Azolla, because unless we know this, we will not have even interest to continue with the training. I have shared a table on your screen. I hope you can see. And this is basically based on a dry weight. So the following chemical composition is available in Azolla. First, we have nitrogen at 5%. We have phosphorus at 0.5%. We have potassium ranging from 2 to 4.5%. We have calcium 0.1 to 1%. We have magnesium 0.65%. We have manganese 0.16%. We have iron 0.26%. We have crude fat, that is 3 to 3.3%. We have sugars 3.4 to 3.5%. We have starch 6.5%. We have chlorophyll 0.34 to 0.55%. And ash at 10%. From this table, it is worth noting that apart from being a feed that supplies a lot of nutrients, it is also a good source of nutrients to our crops. Therefore, you can also use Azolla for your teas, for your fermented teas. You can use Azolla. You will take advantage of all these nutrients that are rarely found in a single plant. So this is very important, and I want to insist that apart from feeding our livestock, our animals on Azolla, we can also use Azolla to make our plant teas. So for you to grow Azolla, there are things that are basic. These are the requirements that you must have for you to start up cultivation of Azolla. As I said, it is an aquatic plant, therefore, water is mandatory. And not just water, we need fresh water. I have indicated 10 to 15 centimeters in the multiplication pond. Adequate water level in the main pond is around 4 inches. So water is mandatory. It is also very important for us to have the right temperatures. And I've indicated that day and night ranges between 32 to 30 degrees. These are most favorable. But for a luxurious growth of Azolla, temperatures should be 23 to 30 degrees centigrade. Meaning, at those temperatures, I am calling it luxurious because it will grow without any hassle, and you're not supposed to even add any nutrients when the temperatures are right, and you started with the right nitrogen nutrients as you laid your pond. The other thing is, light is also very important for Azolla, but also note that it should be partial shade. So you can put your structure under a tree, or you can use the shade net, but always ensure that it is getting enough light. On humidity, it has to be really humid at 85 to 90%. On soil pH, Azolla grows well in slightly acidic soil. So if your soils are not acidic, then you need to ensure that you improve on that to at least 5.2 to 5.8. Others talk of even 7 pH, but anywhere from 5, it will work. Nitrogen, it is also important that you note that Azolla is nitrogen fixing fan and does not require nitrogenous fertilizers for its growth. We are told that you can use phosphorus 20 kgs per hectare. This is a big area. If you're to construct a pond or ponds covering an hectare, then it will take you 20 kgs. This is good for, this is desirable for good biomass production, because at the end of the day, what we want in Azolla is the biomass. So it's important for us to consider supplying enough phosphorus for us to get the right biomass. I hope we are together. Can I get a shout out from anyone for me to be sure that we are together? Maybe somebody can comment. I might not be able to see, but I know Ratemo is there. Ratemo, I hope people are following.
Yeah,
so
we
I'm
have
not speaking to myself.
We have 24 people live. We have people here on Zoom. I'm seeing we have Moses, Vivian. Say something. Are you following, Trina?
Yes, you're following keenly.
Thank you. At least I've had people speak. Now I know we are together. Moving to the next slide. Now I want us to walk together, because now this is the step-by-step process in Azolla cultivation. So the first one is pond selection. You need to select an area where you will construct your pond. And number one, I have said, it is important for you to place it near home for regular upkeep and monitoring. It is not a must, but you can do this for regular upkeep and monitoring. Although I've also seen farmers who've done this along the riverbank. But my problem with that is you're not able to monitor it regularly. And as you will see as we proceed, you need to make sure that it is purely organic. Organic is in my mind all the time. I keep mentioning it. So you have to make sure that it is only Azolla growing in that pond. And because we've supplied everything that is necessary for growth, any other aquatic plant could even grow in that pond. So it is important for you to keep it in a place that you can really monitor it. So if it is, if you're doing it along the riverbank, then at least ensure that you are always inspecting that pond. Also, it is important for you to place it near a regular water source. It could be, if you have a borehole, it's important for you to ensure that it is close or it's nearby. If you're also using piped water, it is important that you place it near that area. So it's important that it is near a regular water supply. As I mentioned earlier, make sure that the place that you selected for your pond is under partial shade. Why are we talking about partial shade? Two reasons. One, it will minimize evaporation. Can you imagine during the dry season, if your pond is exposed to the light, you could be losing a lot of water. So to discourage that, make sure it is under partial shade. Probably, if you placed your shade, maybe you're using a shade net, as you can see in the photo, you can place it on top and do not cover all the sides to ensure that morning hours it's getting direct sunlight and in the evening. But during the day when the sun is very hot, it is under the shade. So consider that. And I've also said that when it is partially shaded, it encourages growth. The other thing for you to consider is the floor area of the pond should be free from any sharp areas or objects to avoid breaking of liners that might cause leakage. Here, I'm talking about maybe you're constructing your pond in a place where there are rocks. So ensure that the surface is free from any sharp object. Because come to think of it, you've bought a dam liner, but then within a very short time, it has been bricked by sharp objects. That will cause leakage. And trust me, if you lost your water, and if you're not there to always monitor, be assured that you will lose all the crop. So it's important to make sure that the area is flat. Now let us get, you've found the area, you've selected the right area for your pond. The next thing that needs to happen is now construction of the pond. So pond size will depend on the number of species that you want to culture or the supplement requirement that you need in your farm, or still availability of resources. So if you need, if your need is like 5 kgs per day for the supplements, then that means you need to get a bigger pond. But for our case, I'm going to use 4 by 6 as our standard pond size. Therefore, for any smallholder farmer, you can do a 4 by 6 feet pond, which is enough to produce around 1 kg of supplement every day. So if you have your cows, 1 kg is enough. Because when I talk of smallholder farmers, I'm talking about that farmer who has 2 to 3, maybe 4 cattle. So 1 kg will be enough to supplement for that. So 4 by 6 pond will be enough. So if you need more than that, you can always play around the figures. Because if this is for 1 kg, then if I need 5 kgs, I'll just multiply by 5 and I'll get, or I can actually work on small ponds of this size, several of them. The other thing is the selected area should be cleared and leveled. So the walls of the pond can either be made of bricks or raised embankment made from the excavated soil. So I have said the pond is 4 by 6 feet. So the soil that comes from there can be used to raise the embankment. Also, the pond can be lined. Although I've seen farmers who are doing this, lined, especially those who do this along the riverbanks and in areas where the soils are clay, so it's able to stand. The other thing is secure all the sides properly using bricks. You can, if you've lined, so for the liner to stay well, ensure that you're securing all the sides. So in other words, once you've laid your liner, you can place some bricks inside to ensure that the liner is held tightly to the wall. As you walk on your pond, I'm imagining that maybe you bought some, what do we call, some seed, Azolla seeds from maybe another farmer. And what you did is you've been raising or multiplying your seed, maybe in a container or something. And now you're able to, you have enough for your pond. So you inoculate the pond and you cover with a net to prevent debris from falling to the pond. As I said, we just want to ensure that inside that pond, we have water, a bit of a cow dung that we've placed in there, and Azolla, and nothing else. So that when you are harvesting to feed our animals on, we are not collecting plus the leaves and any other thing that may have fallen to the pond. Now, once your pond is ready, always ensure that you sieve fertile soil. So good soil, fertile soil, but ensure that you sieve the soil to ensure that any material, any big material that could even float on the pond is removed. And then mix your soil with cow dung, water, and spread uniformly in the pond. I've also indicated that biogas slurry can also be used instead of cow dung. Actually, the slurry could be the best because it is kind of refined, so it's soft. It doesn't have any debris, so it will be fine and it can mix well with water. So the depth of water should be 4 to 6 inches. Ensure that the water you're putting to the pond gets to 4 to 6 inches. After that, a kg of Azolla culture will be put in that pond. So as I said, 4 by 6 feet pond will require a kg of Azolla. So if your pond is bigger than this, you can always work with that figure. I hope we are together.
Yes, even online I'm seeing comments that we are together and they're following very closely.
Perfect. We can continue now. Now, I hope you can all see that pond. It doesn't have to be very complicated. It can be as simple as it can get, and it can also be as complicated as it can also get. But if you look at that structure, it has been lined by a dam liner in a very simple way that any farmer can do this. Of course, your structure can be better than this, but we are sharing what farmers are doing. This is a pond from one of our farmers, and therefore, it is possible to use such kind of a dam, a pond. So, for us to maintain this pond, we need to add nutrients to the pond at least every 2 to 3 weeks. But it will also depend on your production. Some farmers would put enough nutrients when they start, and their production is a bit slow, or you're not harvesting regularly. So if you're not harvesting regularly, that means that consumption of the nutrients will be quite low. So you can even stay to a whole month before adding nutrients. The other thing is any litter or aquatic plants should be removed regularly. I mentioned this earlier, that because we have other aquatic plants that can grow in such ponds, it is important for you to ensure that your pond is free from those aquatic plants. It needs to be a pure stand of Azolla. Basically, the reason is you could be, the other aquatic plants could be poisonous for let's say for a poultry. So we don't want to risk the health of our livestock in the process. So we have to ensure that any aquatic plant that is growing there is removed. The other thing is the pond needs to be emptied once in every 6 months. And the cultivation started with new soil and new Azolla culture. So the pond, you can work on your pond for a whole 6 months, meaning it can only be emptied twice a year. So it's quite convenient. It is not a lot of work. Any farmer can do this conveniently at the comfort of the other work that they are doing. Because if it's twice a year, then you have enough time to produce and finally empty the pond. This is to ensure that we are supplying fresh nutrients, and also to ensure that if there are other development of other aquatic plants, maybe at the base of your pond, we are able to get rid of them. Once you've planted your Azolla, we come to the point of harvesting and now feeding. After 10 to 14 days, the Azolla will cover the whole pond, and it can be harvested from the 15th day. And I've indicated that this will depend on the quality of culture used, the climatic condition, and the nutrient level. So I have seen that most farmers would get their Azolla culture from another farmer. And it is always very important that you get to harvest, you get the right, the mature Azolla for your seed. So if you get the mature Azolla for your seeds, what will happen is it will do well. But if you pick the smaller ones or the young ones, maybe 3-4 days old, it will take some time for it to establish. And also you'll not be sure of the quality of your seed. So it is important to get mature Azolla for your seeds. The other thing is when the sun is too hot during the dry season, at times you find that even the temperatures in the pond changes, and this could affect the growth of Azolla. For example, those who may opt for raised ponds, I'm advocating for the use of bricks because bricks will kind of maintain the temperatures, unlike those who would prefer cemented ponds. So the cemented ponds will cause, there'll be a fluctuation of temperatures in the water, and this would affect the growth of Azolla. The other thing is, of course, the nutrient level. If you've been using the same pond for over 6 months, then the production will come down. It is important that after the 6 months, you empty the pond, start afresh. And during these other periods, ensure that you add nutrients to the pond. For example, after harvesting, you can add some slurry to your pond. This is to ensure that we are supplying nutrients for Azolla. The other thing is Azolla is harvested by scooping. You can even use your own hands or use a plastic sieve. I have also seen farmers who have embraced the use of locally available materials like a shade net. You can make your own sieve from a shade net, especially if your pond is big. You can use a shade net. You make it in a way that you're able to put a handle that is a long stick to enable you harvest Azolla without necessarily getting into the pond. So you can use a plastic sieve, shade net, or just the common nets. Of course, I cannot say mosquito nets, but if they are old mosquito nets, you can also make your sieve from that. I am underlining old mosquito nets. The other thing is Azolla can be fed to livestock in fresh or dry form. So it can be fed directly or with other concentrates. Let me explain. So I can actually harvest my Azolla from the pond and feed my chicken directly with that, and feed my fish directly with that, or I dry them under the shade and feed my my fingerlings on that directly, or I add to other concentrates. For example, if I'm feeding my cows with the other concentrates like dairy milk, I can add to that. Or maybe we have farmers who use maize stovers to feed their livestock. You can add Azolla to that, or any wheat straws or whatever you have for your livestock. You can add Azolla to that and feed your livestock. The other thing that is important during harvesting is that Azolla has to be cleaned thoroughly in clean water. This is to remove the cow dung smell. As I've mentioned severally, we use slurry in our to supply nutrients to our ponds, and therefore the smell of cow dung will always be in that water, and of course Azolla will grow with that smell. So it's important that we rinse Azolla before we feed on our livestock, or otherwise our cows will not enjoy Azolla. The other important thing is for you to shade your pond to prevent direct sunlight. I have mentioned this over and over again. it should tell you how important this is. And the main reason is, if you leave it in direct sunlight, your azolla will turn brownish, reddish in color, which of course will not be appealing even to the eyes of our livestock, but at the same time, it will lower nutrient levels. So please, this is very important. Shade your pond. Prevent direct sunlight. Allow me to continue, and then we will ask questions. We are almost there. I know we'll have a lot of questions, so we'll answer questions at that level. I said from that picture, I said you don't necessarily have to have a liner for you to produce azolla. In wet areas, azolla can be grown, like what you see in that picture. But at the same time, it is important for you to note what other things are growing in that pond. If you see clearly, there are other water aquatic plants that are growing in that pond. Also, you're not able to manage your pond correctly if you allow it to be just that way. But of course, you can produce your azolla. I've seen most farmers would use such an area to culture their azolla. So, as I said before, everything that has the positive side also has the negative side. And at this point, I want to share with you the limitations of azolla. One, water is prerequisite for azolla production. Therefore, no water, no azolla production. And this could be the main challenge that is experienced by farmers, especially in the arid and semi-arid areas where they are not able to get enough water. So the main limitation actually is water. And unfortunately, we do not have yet any technology of how to produce azolla using less water. Although this is now an area that farmers can try, especially in the arid and semi-arid areas, but water is prerequisite. The other limitation is the extremely low temperature that is not suitable. So at times we are not able to control the temperatures, especially during the rainy seasons. The temperatures can really go low, and we have no control over that. That is one of the limitations of azolla cultivation. The other limitation could be the initial cost, which is slightly high. I'm thinking of the construction of that pond. So you need, it cannot be done by everybody. At least you will incur some costs in producing azolla. And of course, buying the seeds. Most farmers would sell you 2,000 Kenyan shillings per kg. So it's quite expensive. And also, we cannot fail to talk about the ignorance of the importance of azolla. So at times, it's not necessarily that it is difficult to produce azolla, but it is us not knowing the importance of azolla. Because I know some of you would be like, this crop has been, this aquatic plant has been here for the longest, and we've never known it could be used for this. So those are some of the limitations of azolla. I want to, before I get to the reference, I want to mention how azolla, the type of animals that can use azolla. So I have mentioned fish, and for fish, I have actually seen farmers using feeding fish with azolla, and especially for the fingerlings, it's important that you can feed azolla directly, but it is also very it's more palatable for the fingerlings when you dry your Azolla and now feed them with that. Because once you dry them, you can grind them to a finer form that can be easily utilized by the fingerlings. That is one. You can also use your Azolla for poultry. Poultry, all start with the hens, of course, the chicks. You can use for quails. I don't know if farmers still do quails, but those who do quails, you can use for your quails. You can use for your ducks. Maybe that is why it's called the duckweed. You can use for your ducks. And for this, one important thing about use of Azolla is the formation of the egg. The yolk becomes a deep, rich yellow. So it improves on the color of the yolk. And I've seen some farmers trying to feed the Azolla on improved breeds, chicken breeds, to improve on the quality of the egg. So farmers who do poultry, this is for you. You can do Azolla. And of course, you cannot just feed Azolla. You will have to supplement Azolla with other feeds. And for example, rural farmers who do not buy concentrates for their poultry, I've seen farmers who just feed their chicken on maize. You can now add Azolla. It will balance all the nutritional requirements for their poultry. So poultry farmers, note that. You can also use your Azolla for your dairy cows or goats, and it will increase milk production. And I've also seen farmers using Azolla as a substitute of dairy meal, because basically what we are feeding our animals on a dairy meal is supplying all the nutrients that are necessary for milk production. But here, from our previous screen, allow me to go back to this screen. If you look at this screen critically, you're able to realize that we can get all these nutrients from Azolla. So when you have Azolla, you will cut down on cost of milk production, and therefore you're able to make more profit from your enterprise, your dairy enterprise. You can also feed your goats, as I have said. You can feed your ducks, so your birds, your livestock, and maybe somebody can also add another animal that they've used Azolla on. So the other thing I also want to mention is Azolla can be produced not necessarily on a pond. You can also use plastic containers like a basin. You can use a drum. You can use a drum to produce Azolla, especially if you're producing maybe, let's say, chicken, and you don't have enough space that you can put up a pond, then you can use containers to produce Azolla. So it can be done by anyone, and of course, it is convenient for everybody. So you can try Azolla. I'm giving you some references that you can look into as if you want more information about Azolla. I've given you 3 references. I've given you Fish Nutrition in Aquaculture by Sena. I've given you Freshwater and Aquaculture by Kumar Rath. And there is a video in Access Agriculture in English, Kikuyu, and Swahili on growing Azolla for feeds. And the link is there. I'm sure Ratemo can also put the link on chat so that everyone can access. And therefore, having come this far, it is time for us now to give you a chance to ask questions so that you can proceed from there. So please ask your questions. I'll be here to answer. And I know I'm not alone. We have other people with us, especially those who are joining us in the Zoom, who will be able to answer some of your questions. So Ratemo, back to you for the question and answer session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Grace. And as you can see from her presentation, it was very specific so that we get all the information we can about Azolla. And also she has posted her contact information in case the Q&A session ends, the conversation does not stop. If you want to reach her, she has put her contact there. You can just note it somewhere, and also the PELUM contact. At the same time, all the presentation, we are going to post it on our PELUM Kenya website. So after this, you just check, it will be there. Now, there is a question from Beatrice. Can I use a dam liner for a raised pond?
But I can answer that, or can we take two questions?
Let me do another one from Percy Jerry. She joined late, so apologies from her. So the question is, what are the seeds of Azolla for propagation? Yeah, you can take those two, and I look for more questions from people who are online.
All right. So maybe before I answer, I'm also giving a chance to the experts in our Zoom link, those who are joining us on Zoom. Is there anyone who would wish to take a question?
You can just proceed.
All right.
Yeah.
So yes, Beatrice, you can use a dam liner for a raised pond, but also if you're in a position to use bricks, it will be better. But if you're using a dam liner for your raised pond, then it is important that you ensure that the walls are supported well. So maybe you can use, I've seen farmers using bamboo, and of course you can use timber for just the way we do our raised fish ponds. So you can do the same. You can use a bamboo to support the walls or timber, and then line with the dam liner. And of course, make sure that you're using the heavy gauge. It will serve the purpose. So yes, Beatrice, I hope you have answered your question. For the person who asked about seed propagation, we have people who can supply the seeds, but you can culture your seed. So for example, if you're doing, when you get your seeds, you can use your basin or even a smaller pond to culture your seed. What happens is you provide enough nutrients and ensure that the Azolla is fully mature, and then you can actually break the mature Azolla with your own hands and spread in the bigger pond. And we have people who can sell you Azolla seeds in every region. I'm sorry, I do not have the contacts right here with me, but of course I can also supply. I do Azolla myself, so I can supply. And once you get your first seed, you can always propagate your own seed, especially in a smaller pond. That is how I can answer you, what was her name? I did not.
As Jerry.
Jerry, yes.
Yeah, there's also another question from Michael about where you can purchase the Azolla. You can reach us, you can see our email, our number. Depending on the location you are, we can direct you to a farmer or someone selling Azolla. Because we don't know where you're from, exact location. So please reach out. You can reach Grace or PELUM. The numbers are on the screen, and then we will direct you to a person who is selling the Azolla. Yeah, so we have questions on Zoom. I wish for people to raise their hand and then post their question. Because you are online, you can speak for your question. So Stephen, are you able to talk so that you post your question from ADS? Okay, if not, the question is, first of all, he says, thank you for the presentation. So in terms of cost, what is the initial costs? How can the average temperatures be maintained? I think there are several questions in one paragraph. Maybe you can note somewhere, Grace. So the first question was, what is the initial costs? How can the average temperatures be maintained? How much should cattle or chicken take per day? And is it mixed with other feeds? Maybe you can take that and then we go another round of questions.
All right, I'm noting the questions. So Michael, the initial cost of production will depend from one area to the other. Let me talk about the construction of the pond. So our pond, that is 4 by 6 and 20 centimeters deep. Depending on the cost of labor where you come from, can go up to around 1,000. And then of course, your purchase of seeds from 2,000 Kenya shillings. Of course, you can use the available nutrient supplies. So with around 3,000, you're able to start your Azolla business. So that is why I'm saying the initial cost could be a bit high, especially for the smallholder farmers. And to address this, we usually encourage farmers, especially those who are in groups, to work together. They can have a single pond for a start, so that the other farmers can get seed from that pond. So to cut the cost of production down, you can do this as a group. On how much poultry can take per day, it will depend on the size of your poultry, of course. Yes.
So this is still Stephen, and thank you so much for the response. I'm just following up on that response on what is the initial cost. You have mentioned about digging the 4 by 6 at, yeah, I mean, depending with the area. But then I think you had indicated that apart from digging, there are also things that need to be done. Was it that you need to construct it in terms of the sides and all that? Probably if you could just elaborate on that.
All right. Apart from, actually, you don't even have to dig. You can raise your pond. And if you're raising, you still need to line the walls of your pond, depending on your preferences and your resources, of course. So those are some of the other costs that you will incur. And also, it is important for you to protect that area where your pond is. For example, you can use a shade net to cordon off that area where your pond is. One, it is also for security. For example, if you have young children, for their own safety, it's important to ensure that that area is protected. So those are some of the costs that I'm talking about. Although, as I mentioned, some farmers would prefer to put it along the riverbanks. So it could be quite some distance from home. So that could be safe. But at the same time, you can actually find wild animals like squirrels in that pond. So it's important that that area is protected. So those are the costs that I'm talking about. So talking about the amount I just mentioned, around 3,000 shillings, I'm looking at the simple pond that you've constructed in an area that is able to hold water, maybe in a swamp where you will not need a dam liner. So if you're using a dam liner, of course, the cost would go up. It could even go high as 10,000 and more. So it depends on your capacity. So I'm really not going, but if you need now the experts, I have people who can do this for you at a cost of 15,000. This will include the construction and the seeding of the pond. That is how I can answer, Michael.
Thank you, Grace. We have a lot of questions. So I want to give, I think the person raising his hand and just post your question. You have not.
Let me answer the last question, Ratemo, from what I already have. So I was in the process of answering how much poultry can take per day. Okay. I said, depending on the cost, you can actually supply half a kg, or let me call it 5 to 10% of the other feeds. Because actually, this is rich in nutrients. So you can put 5 to 10% of the other feeds. Ratemo, proceed.
Thank you. Yeah, you can now ask your question.
Okay, I'm Martin Odhiambo from Kakamega, working for FIPS Africa in a 4WS project that is being sponsored by McKnight Foundation. Under 4WS, our main aim has always been to promote sustainable, effective, environmental friendly, pocket friendly options that directly speaks to farmers' problems and also adhere to agroecology. So when it comes to fodder, now that we have realized that fodder is always a challenge to most of the farmers, we are suggesting different options whereby we have Azolla as one of our options. So currently in Kakamega, we have over 50 ponds, and there are some things that we have been struggling with that maybe I needed some clarification and also some advices. So one, you talked about Azolla nutrition. So when we talk about nutrition, we also consider Azolla establishment. Now that this is something that is good, helpful to farmers, is there anything that we can add to maybe the normal manure that we are using so that it can fasten the establishment and covering of the pond? Maybe instead of Azolla taking 15 days, for instance, it can maybe take like 5 or 10 days to cover the same pond that it could have covered within 15 days. Then again, after harvesting Azolla, we need Azolla to regrow, then we can harvest again. Is there anything maybe that we can do so as also to fasten the regrowth? For me, as at now, there are some experiments that I'm doing with farmers, trying to check on different products, combining local knowledge and also the global knowledge by using the global products and also the local available products, just to see which one maybe can help in regrowth and also in establishment. But this is something that you can advise. Number two is on Azolla value addition. Let's say I have harvested my Azolla today and I would wish to use it after 3 months. How can I do the value addition? Number three, you talked about Azolla being able maybe to manufacture its own nitrogen, so it does not require much nitrogen. Do you think there is a way onto how we can embed this into farming, in that maybe we can dry like Azolla, or even add something on it so that we can also use it as a fertilizer. So that besides feeding animals, besides feeding poultry, we can also use Azolla as a fertilizer. Then number 4, this is just a concern. What happens when Azolla finds its way into our ponds or the rivers? And now that Azolla is like maybe a water hyacinth, like, so maybe if it finds its way to our ponds and our rivers, is there any problem? Then lastly, I will wish to share maybe another way that we have been trying to make Azolla cost effectively in terms of production and also adoption. We introduced Azolla whereby we were using the dam liners. Farmers complained, dam liners are expensive. I did some trials in Kakamega where I have been using the normal construction polythene that goes for 100 shillings per meter. For a pond of 5 meter by 1, the farmer will only need 500 shillings. So as to serve as a dam liner. And I've tried it with 50 ponds and it's really working. Farmers, there are some ponds that were constructed last year, December, and as at now, they are still on good conditions. So that is also another way whereby maybe we can advise farmers or research on, so that we can see on how we can reduce the construction amount or even the construction cost, so that at the end of the day, we promote something that is cost effective and will also make farmers adopt it. Then lastly, when it comes to feeding, how much Azolla can a dairy animal consume in a day? Having in mind that we also have the feeding challenge, whereby maybe you can feed 1 kg today, then see the production, then next time increase, then also see the production. So which is the recommended rate in terms of quantity that maybe we can feed to Azolla? Thank you, and I'm happy for this session.
Thank you for your question. Grace, you can now start.
Right. Thank you, Martin. Yes, thank you, Martin, for your contribution. First of all, I appreciate the work that you're doing in Kakamega. I think I visited around 2 farmers in Kakamega, especially the lower part, the border to Uasin Gishu County, and I have seen good work happening on that area. Now, let me talk about the nutrition, which was your first question. Of course, I have talked about maybe slurry, but I have also tried using the organic biofertilizers, and it is working very well. I have used Power Flow. I know some of you would understand what Power Flow is. I'm not going to explain it. It is a fermented biofertilizer. It is working effectively. There is also Power Flow from Dr. Mihindo's company. What is the Ratemo?
Yes, the Power Flow is from Effective IPM Association. I'm going to post a Facebook tag on the comments. So they supply Power Flow, which is a biostimulant fertilizer from seaweeds, a very innovative way of generating fertilizer. Maybe Grace, you can continue.
Yes. So especially after your concern was the regrowth of Azolla after harvesting, we have tried using Power Flow, and once we use Power Flow, we are able to harvest Azolla after every 1 day. Like if we harvest today, we are not harvesting tomorrow, we are harvesting the following day. And the biomass is huge, it's incredible. And the size of the Azolla is also bigger. The roots are a bit smaller, but the biomass is immense. So power flow works. We have tried this. And also, when we were establishing one of our ponds, we also used super magro. We used super magro, but we allowed the pond to stay for at least 3 to 4 days. Actually, for 3 days, we let the pond settle for 3 days to enable stability or stabilization of all the elements in the pond. And then we planted, and the biomass was also beautiful. So I can recommend you people try super magro, farmers to try super magro and power flow. So the two are what I can recommend for now. And of course, this is an area that we can do a lot of research on this. So I'll mention that. On value addition, you can dry your Azolla using solar dryers, or even farmers, you don't necessarily have to have a solar dryer. Those farmers who have granaries or stores, you can dry your Azolla in granaries under the shade. At least it should be dried under the shades. And once it's dry, you can grind it to a finer powder and keep it in airtight container. Or I have also seen fish farmers mixing, once they are dry, they mix with their other feed and store in that form, store together. So you have a number of options. You can solar dry or dry in the shade. The other thing is, you talked about nitrogen. Yes, Azolla is able to trap nitrogen from the environment, and therefore Azolla is very rich in nitrogen. And as I mentioned before, you can actually use Azolla to make your teas, your plant teas. So if you ferment Azolla with water for 5 to 7 days, depending on the weather or the climatic condition in your area, you're able to get a very rich foliar feed for your crops, and you mix at a rate of 1 to 2. So if I use Azolla, 1 kg of Azolla, I add 2 liters of water and ferment for 5 to 7 days. When it is ready, I'm able to use the same foliar again at a rate of 1 to 2. So 1 liter of that, I mix with 2 liters of water and I spray on my crops, and it will function so well. I have also realized that it will also chase away the pests, especially from your vegetables, because of its smell. Once it ferments, it has some, I don't know how to explain, some smell that repels on pests. So you can do that. You can do that. You can use it. So we can use it in farming, really. It's a good source of nitrogen. The other concern that you mentioned is on Azolla being an aquatic plant. What happens when it gets to the rivers? It is important for all of us to note that the fish will always feed on Azolla and other aquatic animals, but we might not be able to contain. But what we've done with a farmer in a place called Nangili, so between Uasin Gishu and Trans Nzoia, in a pond that we had Azolla, we introduced tilapia fish in that pond, and it was a pond of around 5 by 6, and we introduced tilapia in that pond, and within 5 days, without supplying any other food, Azolla was gone. It had been eaten by the fish, and we waited to see it regrow it did not, it tried regrowing on the edges, but within a short time, it is not there. So I think I am not going to say I have a lot of information about that, but maybe it's a concern for all of us. We need to think about a way. So that could be the reason why it is not, we do not encourage farmers to put this along the river banks before we know exactly how to handle this, so that it does not become another seaweed, like what I have mentioned a while ago. Power flow is made from the seaweed. So actually people are helping in cleaning our lakes by removing the seaweed and making biofertilizers from it. So maybe that is what I can say. Really, Martin, I think it's food for thought for all of us, and we are going to follow up on that. The other thing is on, you've mentioned about the construction cost. This is interesting that you are able to use the normal polythene. Of course, I know the shelf life will be shorter, but at the same time, it will be more convenient for more farmers. So I'm in support of this. We can use the available materials. As I have also had a group that is doing a trial that I'm not able to share now because it's still in progress. What they did is they constructed their pond and smeared the walls with cow dung, tunasema kuboma, the way we do our houses. That is what they did with their ponds. They did the first smearing, waited for a few days, did another one, waited for some time, and did the final one. And after that, they've put water and planted Azolla. What we are trying to do with this is to see how the level of loss of water, and this is happening in what's in Gishu. So it's quite dry. It's not very wet at the moment. The rains are not as we expected to be. So we are monitoring how we are losing the water in the pond or how it is holding the water. So that is something we are trying. We cannot say for sure it's working. It's something under research. Maybe we can also, you can try something on the other side. But the sheet, I think that is okay. We support that. You finally talked about feeding. Somebody had asked about feeding poultry. Now you've asked about feeding dairy. Farmers have had their own practice. And I've seen farmers feeding their cows with a kg, a dairy cow that produces around 10 kgs of milk per day with a kg of Azolla per day. And the farmer reported that he was able to get at least half a liter of milk increase. So it is work in progress, but from research, we are told we are supposed to feed at least 10 kgs of Azolla, 10% of Azolla to the total kg of feed that we feed on our animals. So for example, if your cow takes, if you're feeding your cow with 5 kgs of concentrates per day, then 10% of this should be Azolla. So we are cutting down on the number of kgs that we are using on our livestock. And also, I have seen farmers who've stopped completely using dairy meal. Instead, they are substituting dairy meal with Azolla, and the production is still good. So it is also an area to explore more, but we usually encourage farmers, dairy farmers, to at least use a kg of Azolla per day. Thank you, Martin. I hope I've answered your questions. And I think there is so much for us to learn. We can cross-learn and share information across Trans Nzoia and us. Or not Trans Nzoia, actually, Kakamega. Maybe another question, Ratemo?
Yes, there are 3 questions from Facebook. I want to start with Henry. Cheriot, what is the optimum temperature for Azolla and how can you achieve it? And then, do I give you 3 questions or?
Yes.
Okay. The question in terms of consumption, if there's too much consumption, especially for livestock, for instance, does it cause side effects such as bloating? The last one from Kevin, how frequently does a farmer have to add nutrients to the pond? And take those 3.
Yes. So let me start with the first one that I have also seen people inbox me with the same excessive consumption of Azolla. And I want to indicate very clearly that Azolla is easily digestible. It is easily digestible. And because the cow is taking everything, including the roots, it is highly fibrous as well. So bloating has not been reported as a case as at now, but also it is a caution because anytime we feed our livestock on wet, highly, when the moisture content is high on any feed, bloating is always a concern. That is why it is advisable that before you even feed your Azolla, if you're feeding them directly to your livestock, upon harvesting, you clean them and you let it, you do not feed immediately to your livestock. You let it wilt a little bit, probably under the shade. If you are feeding them in the evening, you harvest them in the morning. It will have lost a bit of moisture, but at the same time, the nutrients level is still very high. So we don't have to wait until the cows bloat for us to look at this as a concern. So anytime the moisture content is high on any feed, it is a concern for livestock. So I'm encouraging our farmers, you can do value addition. That is, you can dry them and then feed the cows on, or wait, let it settle for some time before you can feed your animals. The other question is on frequency of supplying nutrients to the pond. I said 3 to 4 weeks, but it will depend on your level of production. If your level of production is high, then you can supply, if it's not very high, you can even do it once a month. So it will depend for the person who was asking that. I'm sorry, I did not pick your name. And finally, the question that was asked by Henry on optimum temperatures for Azolla. I think I mentioned this as we were starting, but at the same time, we usually say, at least let it have a 30% of sunlight. That is one. And also, I mentioned 25 to 30 degrees centigrade is still okay for Azolla. So it is manageable. But what our concern was when we discussed this was during the very cold seasons like now. Currently, I'm in Molo for farmers training under KCOA with MEA, and the place is very cold. It's very cold. So when the temperatures are very low, it might be very difficult for us to manage the temperatures. But again, look at the ponds that have been, like the one I shared on my presentation. There was a photo where a farmer is using a black dam liner. Can you think about it when the sun is very hot? It will also, so the temperatures will keep fluctuating, but anywhere around that figure is still good. Ratemo?
Yes, thank you. I see a hand from Martin. I don't know we give him a chance to ask, and then.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to share maybe a concern and also maybe inquire from you on pest and diseases. I have been having challenges with frogs, whereby frogs they find their way into the Azolla pond, then they eat the.
I think I lost Martin.
Yeah, same to me. Maybe internet issue. Martin, hello,
Yes,
Martin.
yes.
We lost you.
Yes.
Please repeat.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was interrupted by a call. So farmers have been having challenges with frogs, whereby frogs find their way into the pond, then the frogs eat the roots and Azolla dries. So I've been encouraging my farmers to use old mosquito nets. They surround the pond with the old mosquito nets, and that one has been helping them to prevent frogs from getting into the pond. So it has worked. So I just wanted maybe to confirm if maybe there is a way that you have researched on that can also help to keep away frogs.
I think we are doing exactly what you're doing, Martin. Other farmers are using shade nets, others old mosquito nets. So far, we do not have any other strategy unless anyone in following us online or in Zoom can give us their inputs. But for us, we are also using the same old mosquito nets and shade nets to cordon off the area.
All right, thank you. The question from Kevin, I think a follow-up question in terms of temperatures. So in areas where there's high temperatures, for instance, Marigat or Siaya, how will we control the temperatures?
Thank you. On places where the temperatures are very high, then what we need to do is to increase on the shade. We can increase on the shading so that we are able to bring down the temperatures. I have also seen other farmers covering their ponds with shade nets, completely covering the pond. And I think that is something that was also happening in one of the photos that Ratemo you were in. You find a farmer covering the entire pond. So that is why I mentioned that is one of the setbacks of Azolla production. But basically, anywhere between 32 from 28 to 32 will not be very bad. And it is, and as low as 23, you can still produce Azolla. So it's quite attainable. So we can play around with the shading.
Thank you.
Unless somebody asks something else, and you can also be adding fresh water regularly, but that will mean regular or frequent nutrient supply in the pond. Because if you bring in fresh water, that fresh water will automatically bring down the temperatures of the water in the pond. But at the same time, we might be required to increase the level of nutrient supply. I hope I've answered Kevin.
Yes, another question, a follow-up. So Kevin Kipchichir, he says, on my final question, are there any diseases that affect Azolla production?
So far, I am not going to say we've struggled with any diseases. What we've realized is the pests, as my brother Martin has said, like frogs. And also the other problem would be sunlight that will cause our Azolla to turn brownish and in the process lose we lose nutrients. And of course, it will also affect the palatability of Azolla, because when it turns brownish, it is a bit tougher. So far, maybe I can ask Martin to tell us if they are struggling with any diseases from their end.
Okay, for our case, we haven't experienced any disease. What we are now working on is maybe acidity, when maybe there is acid in the water, but that is something that we are still working on. So maybe I can be able to share it later after we are done with the trial. But as of now, we have only faced challenges with frogs and snakes. In fact, the green snakes. So for the green snakes, what I'm currently trying is that I advise my farmers to suspend the fresh cow dung, maybe in a sack, into the pond, so as to see if it will help maybe chase away the snakes. So that is something that I'm also still working on.
Yes, and also for the snakes, we've also had to, when you're fencing or cordoning off the area with the old mosquito nets or the shade nets, you can dig some trench and make sure that the net starts from the trench, like you're able to, from the ground level, it is clearly covered, that nothing can pass through. That is what we are also trying to do for the snakes. And somebody mentioned about use of tephrosia. Like you can plant tephrosia at the corners of the cordon areas, because the smell is not friendly for the snakes. I have not tried this. This is what I have heard and I read somewhere, but I've not tried myself. So maybe that is something we can try. Back to you, Ratemo.
Yes, there's a question from Agustin Mwana. How is the market for Azolla? Maybe for those who are doing it for business.
Yes, Agustin. This is a business niche for any serious business person, and especially for our young people. I remember last year when we were, not last year, 2 years, when we were training farmers under this program, KCOA, and we were training them on bokashi. We have young people who went ahead to do it commercial and are packaging bokashi and selling. This is also an opportunity for the young people for business. You can do this, dry them and sell. Actually, we have those farmers who are in urban areas but do livestock. So there is an opportunity for business. That is what I can say. Because of course, when I started doing bokashi, doing Azolla, I have had farmers coming to ask if they buy me. And of course, I'm looking at it as an opportunity. So anywhere we have dairy farmers, it's not everybody who will go to production. So this is an opportunity. I think someone can run with this idea. Ratemo.
Thank you. Maybe Martin, you can tell us, are you selling Azolla in Kakamega, or is it just for the local production?
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe before I respond to your question, somebody talked about tephrosia, and maybe to come in, you see tephrosia, we have different varieties, and I realized that there are some varieties that are not much effective when it comes maybe to using them to control maybe molds. So I also think that maybe as we try with the tephrosia, there is this variety called Buisa variety. For me, it's effective, and maybe somebody who wants to try Azolla can try this variety, because I've also tried the other varieties, but I don't see them much effective. So for Tephrosia, we can try Buisa variety. Then again, you talked about top dressing, whereby you talked about the power flow, the super magro, but you see that's global knowledge. And we are trying to make this thing be something that it's easily adoptable. So maybe I could advise that we also try top dressing with these local available materials. For instance, I have been using manure, the normal animal manure, but I tried it with the bokashi manure. Bokashi is also an organic manure that becomes ready within 14 days. And it's made from different things, but it tries to embrace the NPK formula. So you will find that most of these nutrients that are being required by plants are in bokashi. So I tried with bokashi and it is really working good. I realized that it with manure, it takes like 2 weeks to fill a pond of 5 meter by 1, but with bokashi, it can even take like 10 days. So that is something that also we can also work on. Then maybe a question that I'm also having is that are we having different varieties? And if we are having different varieties of Azolla, is there a variety that can be good in terms of biomass production? So that maybe we can advise farmers that for good biomass production, then you can try this variety. Thank you. Then there is a question that you asked, maybe if you can ask it again.
Yes, the question was about market. Since you mentioned you are doing Azolla on large scale, are you selling? How much are you selling? Is there an opportunity for the youth? Yeah.
Good. For now, I'm still working on, my aim is that each and every home to have Azolla. Now that in each and every home, you will find that there are chicken, there are dairy animals. So as of now, I'm trying to promote establishment, but we have farmers who have been selling, but they have been selling as planting material. For instance, I have some farmers who sell the planting material, that's 1 kg at 500 shillings. So they sell 1 kg at 500 shillings. Though it is not sustainable, because after I have bought the 1 kg, I go and establish my pond. So next time I may not come back. So there is market, but for a farmer who wants to establish it. But maybe for selling, for a farmer who is going to feed, there is not that much market demand, because each and every farmer, once you feed, you see it's good, the next time you buy, then you establish your pond. So there is market, but to somebody who is doing it and selling it as a seed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin. Maybe Ratemo, I can answer the question on varieties.
Yeah.
We have so many, around 8 varieties of Azolla, but the common one that we do in Kenya is Azolla pinnata and Azolla nilotica. Those are the common ones, but the one that does so well is pinnata, according to our experience. So actually, I have tried nilotica and pinnata, and I recommend pinnata. But the varieties are so many. We have Mexicana, Carolina, there are so many. So pinnata for me. I don't know what variety the Western team are trying, but pinnata for us is working very well for biomass.
I have a question, just mine, not from the participants. Yes. Now, in terms of those varieties, do they like have a different color or the way they look, or they just look the same, but maybe the genome is the, I don't know. I'm just trying to see how do I differentiate those varieties. Is it color, fruity texture or something like that?
Actually, the varieties are different according to so many things. Like for us, the pinata is a rectangular in shape. So you can also differentiate them from their structures. Others are rectangular, others are a bit circular, and also the color. Others are deep green. Do I call it deep or dark green? Others are a bit lighter. And what I don't know about their nutritional value. I have not tried, but the book says the nutritional value is also different. But the one that is balanced is a pinata, as I have said.
Thank you for the clarification. I hope I also helped other people who never got about that question. Now from Facebook, I don't see questions. So let me give people like 2 minutes. If you have any question, please post. And then from the people on Zoom, you're too silent. You have a question, you have any comment you want to share, or I read out your name and you share something you've learned. Terry, are you able to unmute?
Yes, we can do that, Ratemo. We have around 10 minutes, so they can say something before we can wind up.
Yes, yes. We have Anthony. Anthony, please say something. You have a question, a comment, maybe something you've learned you never knew.
Good morning, team. Thank you. I've learned quite a great deal of Azolla. I've been doing my own research on Azolla. I've tried it, but I've not been successful. I think for me, I should be able and do something. My main area of focus is the area of the repellent for snake. I'll just appreciate if it can be, at least can be highlighted more on about the repellent of the snakes around the Azolla pond. And this also can also help in those practicing fish farming. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Grace, do you want to respond on the snakes?
My response will be the same, what you've said before. So far, what we are doing is using the cordoning off the area using all the mosquito nets or shade nets. And as I mentioned, somebody talked about tephrosia, of which our brother has alluded to the Buesa variety as the better one. So maybe we can all try this. I will try myself and maybe give a feedback later. So we can try tephrosia meanwhile. And of course, Martin also mentioned suspension of cow dung in a sack in that pond. Maybe those are the strategies we are using for now.
All right. And a question from China. So following from Kakamega, is it okay to wilt Azolla before feeding livestock? To wilt before feeding the livestock?
Yes, I said that it is for us to lose a bit of moisture, we can do that, but under the shade, not directly. I know we tell farmers to do the same for napier grass, for example, and you find farmers cutting their napier grass and leaving them to wilt a bit in direct sunlight. It is not recommendable. So I'm asking that if you need to wilt, do it under the shade.
All right, there's no more question from Facebook, but I see we have participants from Tarakaniti, from Nyando Crep, we have from Meru, we have from Kakamega, from Eldoret, from Zambia, from Zimbabwe, from Caritas Nyahururu. Basically, we have participants from all over the world, including Zambia and Zimbabwe. So thank you for joining. If you have any question, this is the time. before we close. We also have participants on Zoom. So I want to give them a chance. We have Pamela from Uganda. Are you able to share anything maybe you've learned or you have a question? Please unmute and share. Pamela, are you able to unmute? All right, if not, we have Kevin. No, I think he doesn't have audio. So Beth or Maya, are you able to unmute? Beth.
I mean, practical, I don't know if I would want to talk, but I want to thank everyone for following, and I believe they have learned. And I want to thank KCOA for organizing for this training. And I know most people were interested to learn about Azolla. So thank you, Grace. And tunakungoja hapa nje. Grace was part of our training. We are having a farmer level training outside. So we are waiting for her outside. Thank you.
All right, we are almost finishing. So if there's no question, I wish to request for everyone who is online to just put their camera on so that people can see who you are. Maybe Grace, you can stop sharing so that our screen is big. And then we take a photo. Yeah. Hi, Martin. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining. This webinar was organized by PELUM Kenya through the KCOA project. And we have several plans every month for these webinars. So tune in to our social media, we'll be posting there. Yeah, so Grace, maybe you can share your parting shot to everyone.
All right, thank you, Ratemo, for co-facilitating. It has been a very interactive session. I'm so happy to have been in this session, and I've met people whom we can share research, we can work together, people like Martin and the rest. It was a pleasure having all of you here. And as I said before, I'm here to share what I have learned and also learn from you people. And that is exactly what has happened. I'm so humble. I also take this opportunity to appreciate KCOA for giving us an opportunity to reach out to our farmers. And as you've realized, we are not exactly sharing what the books say. We are mostly sharing what farmers have tried and are found to be working, so that the other farmers can also be encouraged that it is working. Thank you very much. I look forward to some other time. We're doing the same thing and also probably meeting with some of you to progress what we've started. Thank you, Ratemo.
So thank you. We will say bye to everyone and see you next time. Let me stop.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, so I've stopped. Let me stop.